Hello. So in this second video of my 5-part Halloween series for October 2020, we're going to talk about Patty A. Wilson's Haunted West Virginia, Ghosts and Strange Phenomenon of the Mountain State. I'll take this off now. So this is an interesting collection of ghost stories, supernatural occurrences, phantoms, things like this, all out of West Virginia, which, as I had said in my previous video about Tucker and Dale versus Evil, I have a deep connection to West Virginia because I got 2 of my degrees in the Mountain State, and my partner is from there. So some of the stories in here are pretty well-known things that even if you're not from West Virginia or particularly interested in West Virginia, you may still be aware of. So things like Mothman out of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, or the Ghost of John Brown in Harper's Ferry. These are really well-known ghost stories. But then there's also a lot of more obscure ones, including some things that, according to Wilson, have never really publicly been discussed before, or never really sort of publicly been printed or told in any sort of medium. So there's a lot of diverse stories here. A few of them are scary, or not scary per se, and I'll talk about that more in just a second. But a few of them are like scary ghosts. They're like poltergeists. They're like, I don't know, locking people in closets or lifting people in their beds and taking the whole bed out into the yard or whatever it is. That kind of stuff. But then a lot of them are benevolent. Some of them are sort of benign. So, for instance, there's a number of stories in here about hitchhiking ghosts who will just sort of catch rides with people, sometimes to warn them about particular dangers. Like if a bridge is washed out or something like this, there's a story of a ghost who will hitch rides with people and then show them an alternate route around the washed out bridge. But the reason I say that these stories aren't particularly scary is because they're not presented as ghost stories the way that we sort of tend to think about them. Like if you were sitting around a campfire or something like this, you would not be telling stories this way. These are presented as folklore. They're presented the way a historian or an ethnographer or a folklorist would record them. So we have some like background context. In some of the stories, actually, the majority of the focus is background, and the actual supernatural bit takes up only a very small amount of the space. So I'm actually going to read you one of the short ones. Some of them are decently long. Some of them actually include a number of different sub-stories within the same story. So things like the Granttown Mine Specters, the Restless Spirits of Harper's Ferry. These have a bunch of different stories in them, but some of them just have one story. But I want to read you The Headless Man of Fayette County, which is actually the first story in the collection, because it sort of exemplifies the way that this folkloric style, or this historian's writing style, pervades the collection. So this is The Headless Man of Fayette County. When the railroads arrived in the area, they changed more than the topography. People found the flat, level railroad beds easy to walk. The railroads were the most direct route between towns, and because of the convenience, people often ignored the danger of walking along the tracks. As they walked along, they frequently met other travelers, they frequently met others traveling the same route, and they would pass a pleasant hour or two until they reached their destination. From time to time there were tragic accidents. On occasion a traveler made a grisly discovery, finding a decapitated body or one that was cut in half. Train engineers often didn't realize they'd struck someone and did not stop. Many stories are told of railroad tracks where pedestrians or railroad workers haunt the scene of their death. People walking along the tracks between the towns of Pax and Weirwood in Fayette County have reported seeing bright lights dancing erratically in the distance ahead of them. Somehow the lights manage to keep the same distance between them and whoever is watching them, no matter how hard people try to catch up to them. When people reach the bridge between Pax and Weirwood, they see the lights suddenly come together to form the glowing image of a headless man. Horrified, they watch as the figure stumbles along toward the bridge. Suddenly the man is gone, and the poor witnesses look around in terror, realizing they're all alone on the deserted railroad tracks, after just having witnessed the apparition of a headless man. As they glance around, they realize that the headless man has somehow gotten behind them. The headless man stumbles towards them, and they're forced to step onto the bridge to avoid being touched by the repellent figure. As the witnesses watch, the phantom plunges off the bridge into the water. Only later do these people learn that their experience is not unique. They've encountered the ghost lights of Fayette County. As local legend has it, a man was walking along the tracks when he was taken by surprise by a train running quickly toward him. The man either stumbled or tried to lie down on the track, but he wound up being beheaded. His body plunged into the river below the railroad bridge, and his head was never found. It's said that on occasion the man returns to search for his head. He relives the last few seconds of his life, but he never finds his head. Until he does, the headless man will never rest. So we've got a little bit of sort of spookiness going on there, but the first 2 paragraphs of this 6-paragraph story are background, they're context, they're information about the railroad and how it changed people's habits. So it's a very, that's not the kind, if you were telling a spooky story because you wanted to scare people, you wouldn't start off with, when the railroads came, people liked walking along the tracks because they were flat. That's not that spooky. So this is, it's one of the interesting things because, again, Patty Wilson is a historian, so she writes it makes sense that she writes the way that she writes, but it is definitely not, these stories don't come prepackaged for telling around a campfire. I'll tell you that. Some of the other things that are interesting about this collection, though, it is organized by region. So the first section is New River and Greenbrier Valleys, then the metro area, Mid-Ohio Valley, Mountain Lakes, Northern Panhandle, Mountaineer Country, Eastern Panhandle, and Potomac Highlands. So if you wanted to do a ghost tour of West Virginia, this book would actually be a pretty good guide to doing that because it can take you through sort of section by section of the state, and you could travel in a sort of loop to visit these various places and try and spot these various ghosts.